Welcome into another week of Every Day We're Covering. Chris Parks, SJ Munoz with you once again to talk some college football. We've hit double digits, SJ. This is the 10th episode of the program, so we're starting to stack some milestones here. We appreciate everybody that's been listening to us and hope that community continues to grow. We're going to do our best to do that, but always fun when we're making some headway.
Yeah, I think I'll crack a beer to celebrate. Why don't we do that? No, we typically do that, but yeah, it's kind of one of the first kind of wacky weeks, if you want to call it that. A lot of upsets this week, a lot of unforeseen circumstances on our end, but I mean that's the way it goes. That's why we like watching and enjoy the sport. But it was definitely a lot of crazy things here in week 9, going into week 10 here.
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting angle on it too, because sure, we would love to get every single pick that we give you right, and we'd love to be raking in the cash all the time. But at some point, wouldn't that just not be worth it anymore? Like, wouldn't it just not be fun? Like that, we like the surprise element. I mean, heck, I just got done being angry in the other room watching my Kansas City Chiefs piss one down their legs today. So, you just never know what's going to happen, and that's what makes football fun. So, we had a rough week, but that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, part of it we've talked about before is just kind of a lot of these picks is to make the games interesting, right? So it gives you something to a reason to watch the game and make things fun. So, yeah, like you said, we want to win as much as we can, and we're still going to try to do that, and that's always the goal. But have a little fun with it at the same time, and don't take it too seriously. I mean, we're having fun here, enjoying life. That's the main goal.
Exactly.
And drinking some good beer on top of that. So that's the main goal.
Exactly. So a tough sledding, rainy weekend. Just a ton of rain all over the place. Games I was watching.
Yeah.
Wild.
I know we don't get too personal on here, but the Suns boys had a football tournament this weekend. A unscheduled thing that kind of made up, and a 36-degree Saturday, and then by the time the second game's midway through the first quarter, it's starting to rain. So it was a rough weekend. So I'm enjoying these beers here. It's kind of a tough Saturday, a little bit more of a chill Sunday. So that was a good thing, good way to end the week here. I know maybe it didn't go your way on the NFL field, but we'll get a smile on your face by the end of this pod here.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and we won. Our college teams picks up some W's this weekend.
There you go.
So we're feeling good about that. We always bounce back with that a little bit. It was a good way to start the weekend in that regard. Well, speaking of fine beverages, what's warming you up over there after that soggy football contest?
Yeah, that was rough. I mean, not going to say sometimes I have my little Yeti with me, but that wasn't one of the days. So, but tonight I'm going with one of my favorites, actually, Tall Grass Brewing Company in Manhattan, Kansas. I won't say too many good things about that state or that town, but the Buffalo Sweat beer they make, the oatmeal cream stout, is definitely one of my favorites. Really good beer, especially we mentioned it last week how it was still 85 degrees, at least in my neck of the woods. Wasn't stout drinking weather, but we got smacked in the face this week about 32 degrees this morning when I woke up. So we're definitely in the stout drinking weather. So I had to break out the Buffalo Sweats. Definitely, honestly, probably a top 5 of all kinds of beers that I drink. I'll put it on the pound for pound list for my selection. I do enjoy the Buffalo Sweat.
Yeah, that's a great beer. That was one. That's a brewery that's had an interesting journey too. It was that one had to be resurrected there at one point. But they did the seasonal too, where they do the vanilla bean Buffalo Sweat, and that stuff was always like currency.
Oh, yep.
Everybody's trading for them. Trying to find.
It's like cigarettes in prison. Yeah, you got it.
Exactly. Love that one. I'm on the same mode with you here. I've been saving this one for a while because I haven't been able to find another one for a little while, just because I haven't gotten to the right stores that are putting these things out. But they're on the shelves now again because they just had their release day, a little party they do every year, a couple weeks ago. But it's Single Speed Brewing Company. They're out of the Cedar Falls, Waterloo area. And they've expanded now. They've got some other location. They got a Des Moines tap room now too. But they make one every year that's called Zach's Mexican Donuts, and it's a stout. It's also an oatmeal stout that's spiced, and it's got a little coffee, little little chocolate, little spice note in there as well. It's a good, solid stout beer. I really, really like this one. It's one that me and both my wife enjoy a lot. So we usually try to track down a few of these every year when it rolls around. So another good one to put on your list, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm writing as we speak. That sounds really tasty. I could go for one of those, but stick good with the Buffaloes. But yeah, definitely. I'm gonna hope they ship out of state because that's on the list.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So, as we get rolling here, we'll talk a little bit about how we did last week first, and then we'll dive into some other topics here for you. Just running through our list, and that's another thing, too. Maybe we got over our skis a little bit last week. We kind of went heavy on the picks, but that's what's fun. You got to have more games to pay attention to. So, we did have a lot. But we started off the week early. Louisiana Tech and New Mexico State. La Tech blew that one, lost by 3. They were given a 2.5 when we had it, so we lost that one to start the week. But bounced back nicely for some other early week games. UTEP picked up a 37-34 win over Sam Houston State and had that one hit. FAU did their work on Friday night, won 38-16. So we had that one as they picked up a nice victory. And then Maryland was kind of a turd on Saturday at Northwestern. And they lost 33-27. Not only did they not cover 13, they outright got spanked. So,
well, and that was the thing this week. It's one thing when we miss the cover and we can understand, they didn't play that well, or they, just didn't quite have it, or maybe give up a late score, the backdoor type thing. But a lot of the favorites that we had lined up last week, they outright lost. So it's one thing to lose it and they don't play well. It's another thing for, these teams to just, lay an egg basically. So, not to, whatever you want to call it, would make ourselves sound better, whatever you have it. But we aren't the only ones that, were kind of losing our shorts, so to speak, last week. These were a lot, like I said, a lot of the games ended up being upsets or just, kind of big losses, on one or the other. Just not even just not covering the spread, but just playing like crap. Basically, this looked terrible.
Yeah. I guarantee you, there's quite a few of these games we had on our list that I know a lot of people were on. So yeah, like you said, we weren't the only ones losing our shorts. Another good example of that was our next game. Probably a lot of people were on this because I thought the point total was pretty low, but Boston College was only given 12.5 taking on UConn, a team that really has obviously been crap this year. And BC they limped their way through the whole game. There was not a lot of scoring at all. It ended up being 21-14 the final. So of course all they needed was one more score to just cover. But boy, it was a slog. They did not do it. NC State came through for us though. They were getting some points against Clemson and they took care of business, winning the game, 24-17. So had that one. It was a nice pick by you there. Oregon looked very solid. They took care of business and then some on the road at Utah. They were kind of our outlier for the week. They actually showed up and played. They won 35-6 the final there over Utah, dominate that game, and they set themselves up well there in the Pac-12. Duke. This was one that I was a little bit weary about after we recorded last week because I realized that Riley Leonard got hurt towards the end of that previous game. Didn't know if he was going to play. Well, he did play, but it didn't matter. They came out and stunk it up. They lost.
Could have had 10 other Riley Leonards. I don't know if it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, 23-0. I don't know what the deal with that is. I mean,
was Jack Harlow back in the house? Was he back? I don't know. Is the mullet back?
Dang it. Louisville's, they might have something going there. They're kind of been on a pretty good track here lately. This was another one that was kind of a head scratcher for me. South Alabama was at Louisiana. They were given 10. They ended up losing big as well. 33-20 was the final. Their quarterback kind of got batted around in that game. They turned the ball over 5 times, so obviously you're going to lose. You can do that, but just played absolutely like a turd. And they did not. Of course, their quarterback went out with maybe an injury towards the end of that game, so that's going to play into something I'll talk about a little bit later on here in our other picks. Wyoming was getting 5 at Boise. Boy, they finally had their first letdown. Your old Cowboys finally let you down. 32-7 was the final. Boise took care of business. That blue turf always gets somebody sometime.
Yeah, we mentioned a little bit of nerves heading into that one, and it was maybe a bit of a long shot like we talked about. Going off the emojis we use, we throw the baby bottle on that, so we weren't totally confident. And
yeah.
Yeah, they got theirs, but I'm sure they'll bounce back and win by 40 next week, and we'll say why didn't we pick them again? But I'm gonna let them ride for at least a couple weeks. I'm not gonna mess with them for a little bit.
There you
But
go.
yeah, that was a little disappointing. I thought even if they didn't get the 5, I thought maybe they'd make it competitive, but
Yeah.
they kind of like the other teams we were talking about, just really just I mean soundly defeated. Not even didn't really make a game of it, honestly, and
Hmm.
that was probably the most surprising thing to me. That wasn't even competitive.
Yeah, no doubt. Another one that was kind of just another ho hum game, and this team's been pretty good at playing those type of games lately. Ohio State was giving 14 to Wisconsin. Ended up being a push if you had it at that number because they won 24-10. I know that the number I had later in the week was the hook on there with 14 and a half. So of course, yeah, get hit by that one. But yeah, they just another one of those sloggy Big Ten games where the offenses just couldn't seem to get footing and didn't play very great. And then the last two, we had a couple of Pac-12 or the Pac-2. The Pac-2 letdown
Yeah,
for us
right.
this week. Damn it, Wazoo was giving 6 at Arizona State, and they I don't know what happened there. They were not playing well the entire contest, and they lose 38-27 the final. And then Oregon State in the late game, they started well, and then that old Zona Zoo got a hold of them later, and they lost 27-24 was the final. They lose by 3. They were giving 4, so we lost that one as well. I don't know. Going into Arizona hasn't been kind to a lot of teams this year for some reason, and struck again here this weekend.
Yeah, you don't hear a lot of good things about Tucson, and maybe this is why.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were the two that really stuck out from all the picks that we had. A little bit of a rough week. Those are the ones that really stuck out. Where both teams started fairly well. Get an
Mhm.
early lead. Just, I mean, obviously there was a scheme in place. It's a little more difficult to play with a target on your back, so to speak. But at the same time, Oregon State and Washington State have been doing that all season and still found a way to win.
Mhm.
I guess it's just a matter of time in some cases when you're playing familiar opponents, but it's still kind of hard to wrap your head around. And
Mhm.
obviously, we didn't see it coming. But like you said before, and like I mentioned, we weren't the only ones. At the same time, it still pisses you off, but that's part of the game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Arizona maybe a little bit more could have. I accepted that one a little bit more just because they have been playing kind of well and been playing with teams here lately. They've seemed to have really turned a corner with that program. Jed Fish doing a good job there, but the Wazoo thing, they've kind of just fallen off a cliff. I don't know what's going on with them. They're so Jekyll and Hyde. It's hard to understand. It's not
Must be
gone
that
well.
rivalry with game day.
Yeah.
It's distracting from the bigger picture. We'll put it on that. McAfee's in their head.
Yeah, they're focused on the wrong things. The damn flag every week. So yeah, that was our picks last week. Like we talked about, it was not great weather conditions for most games over the weekend, especially if you were kind of through the Midwest. It seemed like everything in that stretch, all the way from Texas up to Minnesota, was nothing but rain, and everybody dealt with that during their games. I know game Iowa State played down in Waco. It was pouring a couple of times during the game. It was not really great conditions, but hey, that's part of it. You fight through it. And one of those games that had that going on that was kind of one of the fun ones over the weekend, the Kansas Jayhawks make it happen and take down Oklahoma. I mean, not I guess for some people maybe a huge surprise. Maybe I guess I'm not overly surprised, but just the way that things had trended, you kind of thought, well, Oklahoma's on track again. They were playing pretty well. Kansas had seemed kind of some of their bumps in the road. You kind of thought, well, they're going to be back in that, lose a few games in a row kind of thing. I think they seem to have happened to them. But, boy, they played really well. I'll give them credit. Jason Bean, the quarterback spot, really stepped up and had a great game for them. They had a good game plan, took care of the ball. That was a fun win for them. It's cool to see them pick up a victory over it. It's always fun when you haven't beat a team for so long, and then you make it happen. So they had some fun with that. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird game. You mentioned the weather, and that caused quite a delay. Like I mentioned earlier, I was coming from a football game for my boys there, and I had to stop and get some of this buffalo sweat, right? So before the game I wanted to watch, I make a stop at the spirit store,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in there and I see a guy with Kansas gear on. I mean, head to toe Kansas gear. So I'm like, they must have lost because he was in there shopping, didn't look all that happy.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe he's just a basketball fan. Because I
Mm-hmm.
get home and the game's still on. I was like, okay, they got a chance here. I catch the end and they end up winning. But it's kind of one of those wacky days. So that threw me off too. But
Yeah.
like you said, it was when you beat a team you haven't beaten a while. It's always kind of fun to see the reaction and. On top of that, something like you said, not totally surprising because we had Oklahoma minus 19, minus 18, somewhere around there last week against UCF, and
Yeah.
didn't come anywhere close to covering. Almost, let it slip away.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that was, one that was kind of the writing was on the wall. One way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe not that surprising in that they lost. Just maybe that they lost that quick or that soon after that, letdown game. Because you would have thought that, UCF was the letdown game, and they would have came back this week and played more what you expected of them. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the record isn't always indicative of how good the team is, and that might be the case with Oklahoma because it seems like to me in the last 10 or 15 years, while they still had quality teams record-wise and put up some big numbers and stuff, they still have never had that defense that was kind of a hallmark of their story, traditional really
Mm-hmm.
teams like of all time. They always had a great defense, and since Stoops left, I would say even a couple of his teams didn't. But when he started, maybe got there early. But especially lately, they have not had the defense that really won them those championships when they were kind of rolling them off there in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was interesting to watch that one, and it certainly makes a quite the race that's going on the top of the Big 12 right now, because that just put 5 different teams tied at the top of the conference standings after the weekend's results, because they were the last one that were unblemished left in the conference. So they join now Kansas State, Texas, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State, who are all just one loss in the conference. So it's going to be pretty wild to see how that all plays out and finishes out, with, of course, a number of those teams still yet to play each other, including one that's coming up here this weekend. It'd be interesting to see how Oklahoma bounces back, because now they've got what probably is going to be the last ever Bedlam game as they go play at Oklahoma State this next weekend. And Oklahoma State has been playing really good football lately. I don't know if you have watched them, or other people that listen have watched them much, but they have a running back in this kid, Ollie Gordon, who probably is going to end up in New York, I'm thinking, the way this kid's playing. He's probably going to be invited in the Heisman race. Just such a smooth runner. He's one of those guys that just kind of makes it look effortless when he gets through the line. I wanted to give him a shout-out after watching them play here this week, because I think he ended up almost being 300 yards on the ground in the game win over Cincinnati this last weekend. So interesting, because they struggled early, and they've gotten on track too. So he's a fun player, and if he sticks around, boy, it'll be interesting to see what kind of things he can do. That's for sure.
When you think about Oklahoma State as a passing team first, usually a big play offense, but in the last few years they've had was it Chuba Hubbard?
Yeah. Hubbard,
a solid running back, and then this guy coming up. Honestly, the most thing I noticed from that game was Gundy with his hoodie tucked into his pants. I can't lie, that was the thing that really stuck out in my mind. Who tucks in a hoodie? But obviously Gundy's got his own history with wild antics and questionable choices in media outlets. We'll just kind of leave it at that. But that was mostly the thing that stuck out. But yeah, from what I saw of it, I was actually surprised at the point I caught the game that it was that competitive, being Cincinnati only had 2 wins.
Mm-hmm.
But Oklahoma State's kind of one of those teams that's kind of lay in the weeds, right?
Mm-hmm.
They seem to have done that the last few years. They end up with 8, 9, some years 10 wins.
Mm-hmm.
They might not be the splashy and exciting team that they were a few years ago with like Blackman and what was the 30-year-old quarterback's name, Whedon.
Yeah, Whedon. Yeah.
They might not be that kind of high power offense, but they're still having pretty decent success. Maybe in a different route, and maybe just Gundy's a little more quiet. That's maybe the way to do it.
Yeah, that was one thing I noticed too, watching him. Like, he just seems so chill in that game. I don't know what it was. Maybe he's just gotten to the point where he's like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. This is what it is. Things are going to happen the way they're going to happen. He just didn't. He wasn't all that fired up ever during the game, so it was kind of fun to watch him.
did Oklahoma pass recreational? They got medicinal cards. Maybe it's something to that effect. I don't follow the state laws that closely. I'm not a politics guy, but that maybe that plays in if that was one of the that could be a factor if that's the case. I don't know.
No,
Any Oklahoma fans, let us know.
chilled him out. Well, I mean, he's a man. He's past 40 now, so he can relax in his old age here a little bit. Other game I just wanted to mention quick too. We already mentioned how well Oregon played. They look really good. Georgia, again, was solid. I thought that Florida, just the way that game's always kind of hyped, I figured they might make it interesting for a little bit, but no, they couldn't do that.
Yes, it ain't been the same since they took the cocktails away. So
I know, yeah.
yeah, that was a little surprised. I know that was maybe not an upset pick for a lot of people, but it was kind of earmarked to be maybe a more competitive game, or maybe Florida if they have anything in them this year, that might have been a game where they made a run for made Georgia sweat a little bit, but that obviously was not the case.
Yeah, so interesting. It was kind of some of the big games this past weekend. There weren't a lot of huge, big marquee matchups, so to speak, to really pay attention to. But there was a lot of good football, and we had fun checking it out. There'll be some really good ones coming up here this week when I was looking through the slate for some big games. So we'll get to that, of course, when we get to our picks. Another thing that's been a hot topic in the college football world, you have not been able to escape this story, I'm sure, at some point. The Michigan Wolverines are under investigation, supposedly, by whoever investigates these things. We've come to not believe anything that the NCAA says anymore, but sign stealing. And this is a pretty apparently elaborate deal that they've come up with here. They've had all kinds of plans set for a staffer to be going to all kinds of different games, watching different opponents, scouting even potential future opponents for college football playoff scenarios. Goes pretty big down the road, I guess, as far as a cheating type of scandal, if you would call it that. A lot of people are on different sides of whether or not this is a huge deal or not. But certainly is an interesting topic, and something that we knew always kind of goes on between coaching staffs, especially during games, like on game days, but kind of the planning and precursoring for it is a little bit more of an interesting side to it.
Yeah, there's always that, gamesmanship or whatever you want to call it. And I know it's easy to dismiss something like this because it's everybody's doing it is the easy excuse. And I'm not necessarily up in arms. Don't get me wrong. I'm not losing any sleep over this or, calling for, whoever at Michigan's head or what have you. But, the brazen attitude is kind of the thing that stands out of, going to this extent, spending this amount of money, like you mentioned, buying, tickets to teams that you might play, you might not, I know, I've seen a story just because I follow Nebraska closely, Omaha World Herald, the big one of the big outlets in the state, put out had a piece about him purchasing tickets to 5 different Nebraska games for this scout specifically to go watch opponents that were playing there. So basically it's almost like a workaround. What it looks like you were trying to do, like you were trying to watch opponents at different venues, without getting caught. But, showing up at this many games and buying all these tickets, it seems like you just didn't really care whether you got caught or not. And you just wanted to do it, whether to do it. I don't know if they're going to be able to prove any, illegal activities or things like that. And it kind of seems, getting to the point of maybe a witch hunt with Harbaugh and the NCAA. They don't exactly have the best relationship, and I know they were, kind of trying to get a little bit more damage on him this year, and he kind of snuck away with that 4-game self-imposed ban. So there might be a little bit of still bad, harsh feelings about that hanging, and that maybe playing into this. So that sounds like could be the case, but I mean, I don't think it's nothing, but I also don't think it's the biggest thing. So it's it's kind of in the middle there. I do think it was definitely for a reason. They're not just doing it to do it. I know I've heard a lot of people say it doesn't really give you an advantage. Well, then I don't honestly. I know these schools have tons of money, but they were spending quite a bit to get this guy to these games, and it wasn't just one guy. I'm sure that's the only guy that was stupid enough to get caught. Mm-hmm. So if you're willing to put these type of resources into this type of scouting, if you want to call it that, whatever you want to call it, there's a reason they were doing it. And it gave them some type of advantage. Granted, they probably didn't need it against most of the conference, but when it came to playoff time, they obviously needed it because TCU kicked their ass. and they had supposedly TCU's coach made mention the other day of they knew they were stealing their signs. So that's another factor in there too. So
Yeah.
I guess everyone's gonna have depends if you like Michigan, don't like Michigan, like Harbaugh, don't like Harbaugh, but there's something to it. Just a matter. It's just whatever level you want to put it at. But
Yeah. Well, like you said, it was pretty brazen. The guy's using his name and just straight buying tickets. Like, he's not trying to cover this up at all. He's not using like a buddy. Hey, buy me these tickets so I can go. Just straight up using the university credit card. Oh yeah, I'm going to go to this game.
When it didn't sound like he was even trying to be incognito either. He was just everything out there, and he's got this almost 1,000-page manifesto, they're calling it, of all his notes he's been taking. Is like I don't know, like, at least be a little bit more clever about it. That's all. I mean, to me, if anything, especially if I was a fan of Michigan, it'd be kind of embarrassing, honestly. Like, just I get that you want to get every advantage you get, and I know the saying, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, blah blah blah, all that stuff. But it's be more like, I don't know, if you get caught like this, like, who knows what else you're up to.
Well, and how would you like to be? How do you agree to be that person too? Like, on the staff, somebody comes to you, hey, we want to send you to Lincoln 5 times this year to watch all these teams. I mean, wouldn't you be like, I actually want to be part of the team. What the hell am I doing here? Like, you just have to go watch. I mean, yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world. You're going to watch a college football game,
right?
But still, like, what the hell am I doing here?
Well, I was thinking too. I mean, this guy could be or could have been. Who knows what happens to him? He's probably going to be, on the list of every book out there. But he could have been a hell of a capper with all the research and no effort he's put into it. I mean, we get him on our show and we'll make some plays. Let's go, bro. But yeah, it's definitely some kind of a fanboy turned assistant, sounds like. But yeah, it's kind of it's really a weird deal. I like I said, for the most part, it'd be like it's more embarrassing than anything. Like, I don't know. They've got, what are they, in the top 4, 3, 5 at the most of recruiting every year? They got a staff that rivals any team in the country.
Yeah, what do you
facilities need? I just don't get what they think they need more. But that's Harbaugh for you. I don't know. I've never really cared for the guy, but I don't necessarily take any of his accomplishments away because of this.
Yeah.
But it's just like another reason to kind of think just another D-bag move by a D-bag, I guess.
Another goofy situation.
Yeah.
Interesting. And like you said, whether or not it gives you like a huge giant advantage, obviously they were trying to get one at somehow, some way. And I did see that note as well from Sonny Dykes there at TCU, how they knew. They got a tip, basically that, hey, they're going to know your signs. Like, we're just telling you, they're going to know. And they apparently in that game supposedly used some of their regular signs as like decoy signs just to mess with them during the game. They had other things that they were doing as well, so the players really knew what to do, but they were using some of that as decoy. And that's just, wow. I mean, how crazy that is to have to get to, there's a whole other part of the game going on, I guess, outside of just lining up and trying to be the better player. So very interesting.
Well, this might be an old school way of thinking too, but I'm just kind of in the mindset too. Like, if you're the better team, they can know your whole damn playbook. It's not really going to make a difference. Mm-hmm. If you're better than them, you're better than them. Like, do whatever you want to try to get an advantage. But to me, that's more of a weak-minded approach to try to, try to get their playbook or get their signs or whatever. You need to be more worried about your team and what you're doing than somebody else. So that's the way I come at it. So maybe that's why I think it's, do whatever you want. I know I've heard stories of old teams, powerhouse teams of saying, this is our play, we're going to do, try and stop us. Mm-hmm. That would be the team I'd prefer to root for. That's the mentality I'd like my team to have.
Yeah. So we'll see if anything comes of this. Obviously, it's going to drag out for a while. It's probably not going to be anything that even affects them this year, which in reality it should if that's what you think needs to happen. But we know how the NCAA works, and this crap drags on for years, and then usually you get a slap on the wrist. Bill Self can tell you all about how that works. So pretty stupid.
They still got that Wendy's deal, so if you're...
Oh boy. So that's kind of some more highlight topics we wanted to touch on here this week. Obviously, we didn't. You kind of alluded to it there a little bit, but does that kind of stuff also have implications on now the gambling side of things? Like what we talk about here each week. That's another interesting point into it, and whether or not they kind of figure some of that out as they do this investigation to see if that did have any impact on how lines were moving eventually. Who knows? It'll be interesting to know, but it does mess up that world, I guess, a little bit, perhaps. So we'll keep an eye on how that ends up coming to a head. We'll get into this week's picks here, though, and we've got lots coming up here this week. It's a busy week of football, and we've got some pretty good games, actually, here throughout the week, too. It's not just your stray, run-of-the-mill crap game early in the week. There are some pretty good ones early on, and at least ones that'll be fun to watch. And we got some good picks here for you. I know you wanted to start it out right away.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do some NFL. We dabbled in it earlier this season, and let's go ahead and get in. I hate to say it, and it pains me, but college football. We got 4 or 5 weeks left, and then we get to the postseason. I'm not happy to say it, but that's the fact. So we got to start, finding other avenues to keep the show afloat, which we'll come up with something. But definitely NFL is one of those ways. And tomorrow night we got Detroit and Las Vegas. I like Detroit straight up. I'll take the money line with them. And I know I've given you crap about parlays, but I'll be full disclosure here. I don't mind a same game parlay. Typically two though. Two legs. I don't like to go more than that. Yeah. So I'm gonna do Detroit, and I'm gonna parlay that with I'm gonna go unders 46.5 is what I'm getting on the number. I think Detroit could probably factor for more of that. 24, 27 points. Mm-hmm. But the situation that Las Vegas is in these days, I don't see them scoring more than 10 to 13 points. So I think that's more where I'm leaning on the unders than Detroit. I mean, I could see a 24 to 10 type of win, something like that. So tomorrow night, let's go Monday Night Football. Take the Detroit money line, so win outright, and then we'll do the under 46.5.
All right, so get us rolling early on. We've got another one for you on Tuesday that I know we both kind of had on our list here as well, with Toledo taking on Buffalo. This is a little action early in the week.
Yeah, on that game, I like the under 53. Neither team has had lit up the scoreboard this year, so I'm just gonna kind of lean on that factor. Not obviously too heavy one way or the other on who's gonna win it, but I do like the unders in that game.
Gotcha. I when I looked at that, I'm actually going to take a chance on the spread too, because I kind of think Toledo's going to pull this thing out. It is a lot of points as far as the spread is concerned. I'm still with you with maybe there ain't going to be a lot of points overall, but they've got to cover 15.5. But Buffalo's really been trending down here as the season's moved along, and Toledo's gotten better as the season's moved along too. So I think they're going different directions. I'm going to take the Rockets to cover that.
I'm not gonna lie. When you think Maction and Tuesday Night Football, I'm not even trying to be funny here. Like Toledo is one of the the logo in the helmet kind of pops in your head. So they've had a lot of big wins and kind of own that window. So them like Miami of Ohio and like Bowling Green, which we may talk about here in a second. Those are kind of like the three teams I think about when I think of early week or Maction type of games.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know you wanted to go right back at it. Is that Bowling Green game a Wednesday?
Yeah. I'm going to take them just straight up and win outright on Wednesday. That's kind of what I said to you, just leaning into that. Just that's one of the teams I really think of having a Wednesday. A Mac in those early odd games. It used to be Thursday night. I remember Thursday night was the big deal, and like a game that you always remembered was, or at least for me, was when Virginia. Tiki Barber. I don't know if Rondé played too at the same time, but when they knocked out Florida State on that Thursday night game, like it was like mid-90s or whatever. But like that's kind of like one of those. It used to be like Thursday night was like the crazy game. Like, oh my God, there's football on Thursday. Now it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It don't matter what day. We talked about that earlier, but yeah, I'll take Bowling Green on the money, just straight up money line. I think they can win it outright on Wednesday night there.
Nice, yeah, and that's something too. That game after that kind of started to get big, it seemed like they continued to put like a pretty decent matchup on that Thursday night game on ESPN every week.
And then the NFL had to screw everything up, right? I mean, I'm not gonna say I hate the NFL. I know you got an NFL team, but I don't. the how everyone just bows down to that league is really annoying. Like, and you can't ever say NFL; it has to be National Football League. It's like, bro, like we know what the hell the letters stand for. Like, let's go. Like, jeez. But yeah, they kind of ruined that honestly because I don't blame the college teams. Do you want to go up against a Thursday night game, NFL? Like, whether it's a good game or not, everyone's going to most fans are going to tune into that if you're like kind of on the fence there.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a big game like I don't know, just throw out big names like Notre Dame, USC. Maybe if they were to put them on Thursday night, that could be a different story. But I just don't travel wise. I don't think the teams would agree to that. But I just the fact that everyone just bows down to them and lets them do whatever they want, that kind of just feed the beast and kind of puts them in the situation they're in. But I do like my college football on Saturday, so I'm not so mad about it. But
true.
That is a little bit annoying from a college football fan perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that might have strayed some of those big name teams away from those Thursday games too is that it seemed like there were a bunch of upsets always in those games, so they probably tired of playing them. Like, no, we don't do that.
That could have played in as well. You're right about that. Yeah.
I'm going to take one on Thursday too. I saw Troy is giving 6 against South Alabama on Thursday night, and South Alabama let me down last week, and then their quarterback got hurt towards the end of the game, as I mentioned earlier, and they're pretty questionable on whether or not he's going to be able to play, especially since it's a short week bounce back. He's got a knee thing going on, which never is easy to get over, so I'm going to go Troy. I think they're going to be able to cover that spread, and South Alabama's heading the wrong direction right now, so I'm going to go with the Trojans to pick up a win for me there.
I like a Thursday night game as well. I'm not hyper. It feels like I'm loading up early in the week, but I got a few more on Saturday as well. But TCU and Texas Tech, they're also matching up there on Thursday night. This is probably more of like your typical Thursday night that we grew up watching. That type of game that you might see on a Thursday. This feels weird to say it too, especially with the history of the Big 12 and especially with these type of teams. I'm actually going to take the under 59.5. Sounds real crazy, but TCU, especially in the last 3 weeks, has 14 or scored 14 and 3. Sandwiched around to 44, 21 the week before. They're just not putting up the numbers that you would think is typical of them. And being a Thursday night game, I think these teams are pretty evenly matched as well. So I think it could be maybe a little bit of a slogfest. And we talked about the weather earlier. Who knows what we're going to get this week? I think it'd be like an under type of matchup. But they'll push that number. I'll be sweating this one out, I think. But I think it'll just barely hit the unders if it hits, and I wouldn't be surprised if I'm pissed off at a late field goal. So this will be like we talked about last week with the emojis. This will definitely be like the baby bottle type and the nipple on this. I'm not going to throw a lot of coin on it, but I will definitely take the unders on this one as one of my plays.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, so that's our early week plays, and for most of the part, those are kind of like we've talked about in the past, just kind of our fun, keep it interesting type of plays. Usually, if we're going by the scale, those are going to be the baby bottle plays. We're not really throwing a whole bunch of coin on an early week game. It's just something to have a little fun during the week. So that's kind of where we stand on that. So we'll get into Saturday now, though. We've got a pretty good slate of games here this week, as we mentioned, and I find quite a few I'm feeling pretty decent about here this week. So hopefully we can get this pick ship turned around here for you. But one of them that I know we were going to start, both of us, with Notre Dame is giving 3 on the road at Clemson. Of course, you had the nice pick with NC State against the Tigers last week. I don't see that changing this week here for Clemson. Notre Dame has continued to play pretty well here lately. And Clemson has just kind of been inconsistent. They struggle, especially against good teams. And this is a Notre Dame team that I feel like is on quite a bit of a roll, and only having to make up the 3 there, I feel pretty good about that one. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of thinking champagne bottle on that one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I might get a little wacky too, and even depending on what app or book you use, there's you make your own line. There's that feature on a lot of them, and I might even try to push it up to 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. I think Notre Dame's going to roll in this game. Clemson, last week was kind of their week to get right. I think we talked about it on the podcast how Dabo kind of went on one of his rants, and it was I think it was a hope to reach his team and maybe kind of rally the troops type of thing. Obviously, did not work. I think Notre Dame's going to mollywop them. I mean, maybe a 14, 17-point win. I mean, I did not have many good things to say about that school very often, but Notre Dame does look for real this year.
Yeah, so that's one we both like there. You want to throw another one out at us there?
Yeah. Let's go ahead. We'll go with a Big Ten matchup here. Penn State at Maryland. A little bit of a big number, but not as big as we went last week. Playing a little more close to the vest this week, at least I am. They're getting minus 11. I think they can cover that at Maryland. Maryland did not look so great last week. Ended up losing to Northwestern, who I know people give the Big Ten West a lot of crap, but they end up going and winning these games against the supposed better half of the conference. So take that for what you will. But I think Penn State's gonna and kind of like Notre Dame, 14-17, maybe even 21-point win. I think Maryland kind of had their maybe shot their load, so to speak, early in the season. They're kind of trending down here as we hit in the second half, and their schedule's only going to get tougher as it goes on, as injuries build up and things of that sort. So I think Penn State is going to win that game fairly easily.
All right, I'm going to move over to the ACC, and Louisville is giving 10 against Virginia Tech. Now, you probably would think this is kind of one of those trap, letdown type of situations for Louisville, just because they've won some pretty big games here lately. But boy, I've doubted them, and they have proved me wrong most of the time when I have doubted them. They're playing pretty salty right now. That was a really, really nice win here this past weekend, and they shut out Duke. So I like Louisville, and Virginia Tech obviously having a very tough, struggling season. I'll like that. I'm going to go kind of probably throw the Stein at that one, throw the beer at that one. I'm feeling pretty good about it, but I wouldn't blow the entire wad on it. But I like Louisville.
I'll do a cheers with you on that. Throw another beer on that little with LSU and Alabama. I'm going on the totals again. We kind of mentioned this. SEC was supposedly a defensive conference, in the past 5 or 6 years, but it was more of a lack of good offenses the way we saw it. And now that the teams have, modernized their schemes and, got the talent to match that, there's been a lot of points put up in these games. And LSU especially, I mean, they've scored 72, 49 twice, 48, 62. I mean, they've put up some big numbers this year. I know they're going against a better defense than they have faced all year. At the same time, I'm not necessarily expecting I'd lean Bama on on the win, the money line, but my play is over 60, and I could see a 35-32, even a 38-35 type of game, and that would get us the overs on that. 60 is what I'm getting on the book I'm looking at.
Okay. I'm going to jump on that game with you, just because I think this feels like one of those that sets up where there's going to be a lot of talk about how great LSU's offense has been playing, which is true, and they're going to put up points. I agree with you on that front. But it's one of those things where everybody's going to think, well, Alabama's finally going to not be able to keep up with somebody. They're not going to be able. Well, that's when they turn around and kick you in the groin, and that's probably what's going to happen here. So I just feel like Bama, this sets up for them to win a game like this. The line I had was they're given 4. I would feel good enough about that. I'd like it to be 3, probably like you said, but I'm going to take Bama in that game, and I'll probably go middle of the road on that, though. I'll probably go the whiskey neat on that. Probably
nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with a little glass of whiskey, huh? And honestly, like for as much success as they've had, they're about as good as any team in recent memory of with their backs against the wall, which is odd because usually when you're kind of the hunted, you don't play well in those situations. That's the times when you see the letdowns like we've seen over the last few weeks. But Saban definitely has made his bacon being kind of us against the world. That's kind of his thing, and he's perfected it, obviously. The last one I have is I'm gonna throw out some champagne on this one, and honestly it might be watching that game last night is probably why I'm leaning this way, but I just don't see it changing over within a week's time. When we talked about defense and playing good defenses, USC is kind of in that Oklahoma boat. They literally have no defense, and they're coming up against Washington with a Heisman hopeful. I know they struggled a little bit last night against Stanford. But when I was watching the game, and one of the thoughts I had is like, how the hell is Stanford 2-5?
Mm-hmm.
They have some weapons. They're a pretty good team. It's just kind of like the little things that haunt them. I mean, even they probably should have pulled up. They had a chance to take the lead late there with a trick play on a fourth down, and I mean literally threw it right to the guy in his hands, and he just drops it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's things like that kind of keep you make you a losing team rather than a winning team. So I do like Washington though to cover that 3, and I could see him winning by double digits, honestly, just with the way it's not even. It could be a track meet, but eventually, defense plays into that, and USC is just not going to have anything. Washington might get, all they need is 1 or 2 more stops than USC is going to get, and Washington has the players that can actually get a stop. I don't know how, but USC, it's got to be a scheme thing because they have athletes and good players on defense. Mm-hmm. They just can't stop anybody and can't tackle.
No, yeah,
it's like the strangest thing.
Yeah, and everybody knows it, and they keep talking about it, but nothing changes. It's the same every year.
That's what be like. If I'm on the corner, I'm like, we're just blitzing every play. There's 0 blitz. Let's go 1-on-1 coverage. Try something different. Anything. They can't do what they're doing isn't working. I know it sounds easy for me because I'm not in that spot, but I think you just got to try something crazy because they just can't do it.
I'm going to back you up on that game too because that's what I loved when I saw that line too. It was like, wow, Caleb Williams being able to come back and will his team to a win is one thing, but when you've got Michael Penix on the other side to combat you, you ain't doing that against Washington. I don't see that happening. I was so disappointed watching that score last week. USC was dead to rights, and they somehow come back and win by a couple at the end. I was like, how in the hell did that happen? I wasn't watching it, but I was just tracking the score.
Well, I believe it was on the Pac-12 network, so nobody was watching it. And also, maybe the protest should have been after the game about the defense played, not before the game.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah,
that's my protest. Yeah, I have an issue with that.
Yeah. I'll throw one more out at everybody, too. I'm going to go over to the Big 12. And it was a pretty interesting week last week. I thought, a lot of teams that I thought would pull out a win last week did throughout the conference. And this is one that I think sets up well, and especially because this team has been absolutely hot garbage on the road. West Virginia is giving 8.5 at home against BYU. And BYU has just been either they play at home at night and they're great, or they're on the road and they're absolutely terrible. And this is a West Virginia team that's pretty salty. They can run the ball well. They've got a decent young quarterback that can throw it around. He's got some of that moxie. So I think they get that 8.5 taken care of. So I'm going to take the Mountaineers in that ball game.
The only other one I was looking at, and the only reason I'm not playing it is because I got to stick to my guns here and can't play my team. But Nebraska's getting 3.5, or as a 3.5 point favorite at Michigan State. Do for that with what you will. I almost took a play on your Cyclones too. That's maybe in the mix too. So those are games I would say, whoever's checking out this podcast, those are a couple games to keep an eye on. I might make those plays personally, but it won't be for the show. But those are a couple games that I also think could play in your favor if you want to make some money this weekend.
Yeah, I like that too. By the way, I'll throw the beer stein on that West Virginia game, just so you know. So, but yeah, that Iowa State game is interesting because they threw out the time finally late yesterday, and it's going to be a night game. And of course, big game in the conference now. And, of course, Kansas coming off that huge win. Do they let themselves down like we've seen everybody do? It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to watching that one in Ames.
And even the totals might be something, even if you're a little leery on the thing. I think that could be a high-scoring affair. That game could be. Both teams are offensively, at least, have been putting up some big numbers as of late. So that might be something to watch if you're kind of into that game, but maybe a little bit. When I saw it was a pick 'em. So if you need a little booster hype for yourself, for your fan base there, that should make you feel good. There, it was a pick 'em when I saw it.
I actually saw somewhere 1.5 in favor, I think, of Iowa State. So interesting. We'll see how that line moves during the week. But
maybe that wind is that
exactly.
Jack Trice wind is going to play into the game. You know it's going to.
That cold north wind. Yeah. Yep. God dang. Yeah. Especially at night. Yeah. So it's fun, and that's another thing too to keep in mind. I guess we've mentioned this maybe in the past, but we play this and we talk about this stuff so early in the week. Things change. Mm-hmm. Those lines are going to move, so you might find something you like a little bit better as the week moves along. So you never know.
Yeah, and like we said, every time, feel free to hit us up. We're active on social media. Even wherever we post the podcast, you can interact there as well. So sometimes we try to stick, be as honest as we can and transparent to, the show and, make our picks ahead of time. But there is numbers that change. Injuries happen. There's been a couple times where I've had to pull a pick with, most recently the Wisconsin-Illinois game a couple weeks back when, the quarterback's hurt. I'm not going to play that game. Like no one in their right mind that plays games regularly is going to make a pick once the starting quarterback is injured, one way or the other. So, if you always, if you ever have any, whatever you want to do, bring it to the show. We're willing to take your, advice, criticism, positivity, whatever you got, man. Throw it at us. We're here to interact. So let it be known whatever your thoughts may be.
Exactly. Here to have fun and listen, subscribe, like, share. We're on, of course, Spotify, the main platform where we put this out, but you can find it on Google Podcasts as well as through the Amazon platform if you're somebody that uses Amazon Music. So you can find the podcast pretty easily in either way. We'll share it out on social media, as you mentioned, so you can follow us on Twitter. At Cherokee CP is my handle. At SJM Bets is SJ's handle. So you can look there and follow us. And then, of course, interact that way. Usually try to put up a poll with the podcast on the page as well. So just something fun from the week that you can share and kind of go with us. And then, of course, you can rate and comment on the program right there online. So we'd appreciate if you do that and continue to grow the little family we're growing here and have some fun. So we appreciate it. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. That's going to be another week of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next week for some more covers.